mate.
How you doing?
Yeah, chilling, not too bad. Just taking time at home. How are you? What's going on with you?
Not too much. Just working on music, trying to be creative and stuff.
Yeah, I think I've reached like a burnout. I think I'm not able to do much. So I've been trying to record some music and stuff as well, but not much is coming to me at the moment.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that that kind of feeling. Has it been good, kind of like playing shows again, like as opposed to having to be creative in like a purely like making something sense?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's quite surreal though, I'll tell you what. Like, I mean, I've only played with Wwarp and Alloxylon. I haven't played with World at a Glance yet. Playing in about 2 weeks, but yeah, it's good. Like, but it's really fucking weird. Like, just getting on stage again and just being around people. And,
having people around. Well, I guess. I mean, sort of, trying to start with how we met, like how I know you and stuff. I knew who you were for probably maybe like two or 3 years. Like I think I met you through like Luke, like and stuff, like breakthrough shows.
Yeah,
I'd always see you around there, but I don't think like it took me a while to like introduce myself or anything. And then I think we've mostly like chatted kind of like online and stuff since. But yeah, like that's most of my memories. Like I don't think I got to see any of your bands or anything while I lived in Melbourne.
No, I don't think so. I don't think
oh,
we
actually,
ever...
no. That's not true. I think it was before I knew you, but I'm pretty sure I saw The World at a Glance once.
I'm trying to think what show that would have been.
It was like, the venue was like, you kind of come down some steps. It's like in the back of like a park.
Oh, Bar 303.
Yeah, I think that would be it.
Sort of slopes down.
Oh, and there's like an old like out of use like fireplace like at the back, and the bands were playing like in front of it. I think, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Shit, no, that's not 303. Jeez, Sam is in like hardcore. Sam.
Yeah, like he's
involved
like
in a lot of hardcore.
Yeah, he's like a lot younger. Well, not a lot younger.
Yeah, but he has like a big fucking beard and stuff.
Yeah, he's
right?
got a massive beard now. Yeah.
Yeah,
his
they
voice is like
do like Silurian and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They would check out. Oh yeah, I know what it would have been. Grace Darling show. I think what you would have saw probably. I was there for that show, but I didn't play it because we were supposed to play it, but we had to pull out because I can't remember the reason why. But World Sick filled out because we have similar names. World Sick filled in for it because we couldn't play it, and I remember being really upset because I went to that show and couldn't it was like a really good show, and I was really upset that we couldn't play. But I mean, we had some reason, I can't remember. It was a good reason. Like I think someone was.
Yeah, because I remember really seeing your face there, and then like that's right though. I remember now because it was on the poster. Yeah, and you pulled out.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's like the only really time I've seen you that's the time that I was thinking of that I would have seen you like actually perform, but obviously you didn't even. But yeah, it was mostly like through seeing you at breakthrough shows, which is interesting. Like the more I've kind of got to know you, like I guess the more I realized that that's like breakthrough, like the scene that breakthrough was playing in was kind of a bit more out of like your regular like taste.
It's funny you say that actually, because so when I was a teenager, like obviously like I had I guess that was the thing with breakthrough, like that was the thing, is that band when I was still in Diploid and we played Tassie, we played with like a different lineup of breakthrough.
Yeah.
And I remember watching them and being like, this reminds me so much of like Zayo and metalcore, and I remember talking to Luke and Luke saying, I said, it reminds me of Zayo, and they were like, yeah, but we're like the satanic version of it, not the Christian side of it or something. And I remember being really into it because I was like, because when I was a teenager I was into a lot more like screamo and emo were always like the genres I was always into, but it was like, yeah, like a lot of hardcore as well. Like I used to go to a fair few hardcore shows, so I have like a history from long ago, but I sort of moved away from it just because of like my views at the time on hardcore, like excessive violence and stuff. I was like not really that into it anymore. So I had moved away from it. But at the crux of it, it was always like a part of my growing up as a teenager in terms of heavy music and entrance into heavy music. Because like Reese from Diploid, him and I grew up in high school together and we're good friends, still are good friends obviously, but like a lot of our friends, we all went to high school together and we're all playing in bands together. Reese was in the original lineup with Blood at a Glance, and I was in Diploid and stuff, and so we were all into like metalcore and stuff like that, amongst other genres like grindcore and heavier music and stuff. So that's I guess that's like when I think about like my presence at those shows, like I go, oh yeah, like of course, like it's like I remember Tom Vandersley's Dirt Baby, the tattooist. I remember seeing him at the Breakthrough show at the Workers Club. It was a huge stacked lineup. It was like a hardcore fest of some kind. I remember him seeing me there and being like, "What the fuck are you doing here? Like, this isn't your kind of music." I was like, "Fuck off, man! This is like." I went with a couple of friends as well, and we all had a good time.
Was it maybe that it was like Extreme Fest or something that it had like a crossover? There was some like kind of like fast hardcore and like grindy bands as well. I think. Yeah, it was like a really mixed bill, and it was like sort of Breakthrough was like on later in the day, and and then there was also, I think it ended up running till like 1 or 2 in the morning or something, and I think it went what was it, really late. Suppressant, I think, played at like 1 in the morning. Which was I do recall them. Yeah, and then actually I remember the next day they played again. It was like at Last Chance, and then like AUS, like Artificial Urinary Sphincter, was also playing, and then the guy, it was like just as they were about to set up, and the dude was like packing everything down, and we're like, there's still like 2 bands to play, and he's like, well, there's another show on in half an hour in the other room, and like we gotta pack it down, like there's no time, because I guess the show was kind of run a bit, it was run to punk time. Yeah, the curse of punk time. That's always a bad time. Bane of my existence. I can imagine that's like a little bit more, I mean, I'm not really sure, like it's been something I've been into a long time, but I lived in the middle of nowhere for a long time too, so I haven't got to a lot of like actual shows of like the kind of Australian like black metal and like death metal and stuff. I guess there's a few kind of levels of it, because there's those kind of like there's some weird levels to like the scenes, because there's like the kind of death metal that's like made by like like almost borderline normie metal fans, and then there's like the more like heavy bands that are that are a bit more, because there's like this weird, I don't know about in Melbourne really, because like the main ones I knew from Melbourne are all pretty like really like pretty on top of it, like Vile Apparition and like Contaminated and stuff. And then like in New South Wales we have like this kind of weird few bands that have like really deathcore-y looking logos, but they're super like death metal but not real evil, and it's weird, and it's like it's really adjacent to like the crusty kind of scene, like punk, like punky crusty stuff, and it's all like less serious. Well, it's funny because like I remember that was like way back in like 2010 and stuff like that, when I was following, like when I was in Diploid and Blood at a Glance, but also like following Reese around with his old band Last Measure. I would follow along and help him drive as well up to Sydney and stuff, and like from what I gather is like from around that time and slightly before, like you had like scrams and stuff. Like I remember hearing this from Scarlett, who plays in drums in Diploid now, but Scarlett's played in like Majorca and like heaps of and circuits and stuff, and like when I was coming into the scene, seeing circuits and like La Criette and like Screamo, but still like everything was really crusty, and a lot of the people who had come from Sydney or moved to Melbourne or going to Sydney to see bands play, there was a lot of crust, like, and like Scarlett was telling me, like that was like the progression was like from Screamo to crust, and so like and it's still like a lot of those people involved in that scene are still very much like involved in crust and still play crust stuff, like K9 and whatnot. It's interesting. Pretty cool. Like, so that makes sense. I was talking to, I had a chat to Jared yesterday, like Sorbs, that played bass in Breakthrough and is doing like Lies and Ashes and stuff, about how we were talking about When Love Dies, like Luke, that project that Luke did. I think Jackson and stuff was in it, and we were saying like, he was saying how he was kind of surprised it didn't do like better than it did, like because he felt like the music was really good, and I agreed with that. And I think something that was a bit like that made it a bit harder to consume for some people was that like people aren't used to hearing like metalcore or like emo that is that raw anymore. Like it's just not really done that way, like commercially anymore. So what people would normally associate it with it, you know, it's pretty different. And like I guess like the stuff that I listen to more, you know, like metalcore bands would play with those kind of like scramsy bands a lot. There was a bit of like crossover. A lot of them had those kind of scramsy choruses and then breakdowns and like MySpace core. Yeah. And then whereas now, like I feel like it's super different. Like you kind of mainstreamy metalcore bands, you know, like are super far removed from the kind of like bands doing like scramsy emo stuff, even if it has breakdowns. Like it's a lot more separate than it was.
I remember like sort of like back in like 08, like I felt like that was sort of like, I don't know, like I guess like if I think about it, like I think of Soundwave, like I think of like all of those bands that you would like, literally every band you could think of, like Dillinger Escape Plan, or you know, but then there was like Get Up Kids, and then like Sunny Day Real Estate and stuff like that, and there was like this really crazy crossover. And When Love Dies as well, like I think. Because like I noticed like in America, like you have a lot of those bands like Sea Space Cowboy and all those kind of bands, and I think that band was almost like too early for it. Like people didn't quite get it. Like I remember listening to it and being like, this is really fucking good. Like and it was really raw. Like that's the thing. But I guess I don't know. It's kind of a hard one because.
But I really enjoyed the rawness of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's like,
definitely is.
Like it seems like there's room for like the Sea Space Cowboy and bands like that to do well, and I think they kind of like like teeter on that line of being able to do well, because like it's a little bit more accessible maybe than like When Love Dies.
I guess as well the American sort of scene, they have a lot more access to touring and can go a lot more places than we can. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't really. Takes us 14 hours to get to our nearest fucking city in terms of
like the next one
touring, which is pretty brutal. Like, so it's hard to sort of spread yourself around.
It is a funny contrast because I feel like for us, like bands feel way bigger here, like from America than I think they do to themselves over there. Like sometimes I think of these bands that feel like if they came here, they could charge like $30 and play with like the biggest bands here as supports, and then we'd be no one would bat an eye. But for them, they're like, I couldn't get to Australia. Like that seems like a pipe dream. Like sure. Because like even like that Realm of Torment band has been like posting a bunch lately. Like just all the nostalgia stuff, so it's in my feed all the time. And like I perceive them as like a fairly big band for like that sort of resurgence of like, like early 2000s metalcore. But they've only got something like less than 1,000 followers on Instagram or something like that, which is it's not the best way to judge like a band's popularity. But like I have over 1,000 followers on my Instagram. Like, and I'm just like a person that that does like like shitty local bands or whatever. Where like I guess it feels they feel way bigger probably than they do to themselves. Like from our perspective over there.
Yeah, for sure. I guess as well because of like the time frame in which they existed as well, where like there's just much more like big community in terms of everybody's like really keen to get to shows and stuff. And I think of like. There's like a 90s hardcore emo group on Facebook that just makes me think of that, and also on like Crimey, I think it's Miss the Stars as well, like Fest and stuff like that. And they like sort of people will share in the group, or they'll the actual members of bands, like I don't know, like bands like You and I, like the band, and like they're posting like photos of shows they played, and everyone's like, oh my god, what the fuck, like seeing all this stuff, and like they're kind of like really in their like Seisha, even like Seisha, like fucking a band that barely played to anybody when they existed, and then when they broke up are now considered to be one of the greatest screamo bands that ever existed. And all their like other bands like Hot Cross and whatnot. And yeah, it's just funny, like Page 99 as well. And, like Circle Square and all those bands like of that era and all that stuff. And yeah, like I think you're right in that. It's kind of like this weird.
It is really funny, like because like I really love that stuff too, like those bands you just mentioned, and it's funny like just looking up sets, and there's like maybe 3 sets, and some like most of them are like reunions, and there's not even many people at those reunion shows. And and for me, like I guess before I knew anything about them, just listening to the music and like seeing when it came out and how like ahead of the curve it was, you know, in retrospect, it's like, you know, what was going on? No one was listening to this stuff. Even like, I mean, I guess it's like, I don't know if you said like you listened to a bit of metalcore like when you were younger, but like even bands like Black My Heart are like kind of one of those like, you know, like kind of top tier, like, you know, everybody knows them sort of thing. It's like, you know, if you're trendy and cool, like you have to know that band in metalcore or whatever now. And it's like they did like an album and like had, you know, like no one cared at the time, and like they're just like this massive legacy band now.
It's funny the idea of the legacy, like with these bands and stuff. Like, yeah, you think about like what, like, I don't know, like if I think of like, you know, like Converge or something, and you look at like the bands they had played with, or like, you know, like Discordance Axis as well, like another band where, you know, absolutely one album and a couple of splits maybe, but and just like this absolutely relentless grindcore, probably the best grindcore, in my opinion at least, that ever existed. But like now they're like in my opinion, they're like one of those grindcore bands that's like the ultimate, but also at the same time it's just like they were like just like the dorkiest motherfuckers ever, but as well it's kind of hard to see that.
Even like the whole like Slap a Ham Records kind of like crowd, like that, like again, like, you know, it's just silly and stuff, and then like, you know, you know, those bands like Capitalist Casualties and like Spaz and stuff is like, again, like the whole, you know, like gold standard of stuff where like I doubt, you know, they were selling more than a couple hundred records. Like,
it's funny, like the legacy those bands have left behind, especially Spaz, like, and like, you know, like Charles Bronson or whatever, like, you know, like they all kind of, it's like this like weird ripple effect of like, you know, they kind of like create this wave of people like just going like, oh yeah, that was really cool, and like going on, and I don't know, like, it's just fucking, it's really cool. I don't know, those bands. You know, I always have a real big fondness for those bands.
And like
what it is.
Especially, like the more extreme stuff, I guess, you know, like the kind of like grind and like noise and stuff, like the bands that were doing like super, even like Naked City, like, you know, like Naked City were like doing stuff that, you know, no, like, I mean, I guess they had like a bit of, you know, like a crowd in some aspects, but like they were doing this stuff when it was way harder to do it, you know, like now, you know, like I was even like doing like a little bit of research, just like, you know, looking into things you'd done in the past, like things that I wanted to bring up and stuff, and there was like a noise show I think that you did where like some guy was eating a burger and you guys just beat the shit out of a drum kit or something like that. And like I guess at like us in this age, we can kind of do that, and at least somebody's like, oh, that's cool, like, you know, like that's because of this, like at least someone in your local scene is going to get it. Whereas like I have so much respect for the people that were doing that, you know, like before we were born, where no one got it at all. Like I can't remember the name of the band. You might know who I'm talking about. There was this, I guess they called it free jazz, but it was like these, you know, like a group of guys that just basically made noise. It was like they're all kind of playing their own instruments, like kind of jazzy instruments, but they just were all not playing it all together, and they played the same like Monday night open mic thing for the last like 40 years or something like that. I stumbled across it on YouTube, but it was like, I just found it like so fascinating, you know, like those people that have been doing it for that long, and just, you know, like before it was even a thing, the people that made noise and like, you know, full outsider art a thing must have just not given a single fuck at all, like even more so than
totally.
You know. I'm interested in some more context about that, the burger eating, kid destroying extravaganza.
Yeah, so that band was a band we started in high school. It's like a joke sort of noisecore, sort of like in the vein of Anal Cunt and stuff.
Yeah.
Not the most like forward-thinking band. A lot of really somewhat proper stuff that none of us are really proud of in terms of just silliness. It's basically it's Anal Cunt.
Yeah.
Just really dumb. Obviously, we don't believe any of the shit that we.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I can relate to that. Like, you know, I've done and sometimes do bands that, you know, have similar things. I guess it's and especially I guess what I guess was considered edgy maybe like 10 years ago when, you know, you were doing those bands was like, you know, stuff you might disagree with now, like the jokes of Wwarp and stuff.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like that group was like we talk about it and we go, oh, we really don't like that. We wish we didn't do that, but obviously we did, so we can't really take that back. But we still have a fondness for like the other stuff that isn't really problematic generally.
Like the fact that it existed.
Fun. Yeah, and like it was fun because like that set you're talking about in particular, we called it the Pounder Room.
Yeah, right.
So for context, we got invited to play this club like weekly, like / monthly or bi-weekly or whatever, but we got invited back to play there a lot for some reason. We don't know why. We were awful. We really alienated the crowd. They did not like us one bit, but for some reason the booker just kept bringing us back.
Yeah.
And it was like a nightclub as well. That's the thing. It was like this nightclub in the city. And it was like really intense, and like things would like get damaged and things would break. And so the story of that set is that we had this in Reese's hometown, where a lot of all the other members lived as well. I lived in Berwick. Reese and Harry and stuff lived in Pakenham, and Nick lived like near me as well, and another friend of ours from Mentone, and Jake, and who ended up playing with us in another surf rock band we started, sort of similar, but was surf rock, called The Big Face and the Boogie Board Boys. Anyway, so in our hometown there was this like silent auction place called the Tender Centre.
Yeah.
And we used to bid on the stupidest shit. They would have like photocopiers and organs, and we would always win them because we would bid the highest bid of like $5 and we'd get it. So one day we found this drum kit there, we were like, this will be funny, we'll bid on it and we'll see if we get it. We bid like $10 and we got it.
Yeah.
So we got invited to play this club, and we went and we brought this drum kit along with us, and our singer bought a pounder burger from McDonald's.
Yeah.
And it was cold as well by the time we got to play.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So I was on drums that night, Reese wasn't there. Jake had this tiny amp, and during the set, we just went absolutely full noise call that night. I'm gravity blasting and doing all this noise stuff. Just stabbing his amp with a knife. Harsh noise. And our singer is basically motionless, eating this burger. And at the end of the set, things got really out of control when we started trashing the drum kit.
Yeah.
And like we threw it downstairs, and we put our feet through it, and like the thing that was really terrifying for me was the moment when our guitarist Jake grabbed the tom arm and swung it toward me, and I did this. And it was magic. Yeah. Like it was like the only time I've ever done something like that extreme.
Yeah, right.
Performing.
I think
it was quite fun.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I really enjoy that sort of thing.
Yeah. It was really alienating and fun, and just that's the thing. The songs were all like dumb inside jokes we would come up with about, you know, our daily lives and just people we didn't like in terms of like our teachers at school and whatnot. But then there was also some really silly tracks that we don't like and would never even dream of aligning ourselves in terms of just mean-spirited.
Yeah.
So but we accept that, and you know, we've moved on from that because we're all queer folks who moved on and realised can't do that anymore.
One thing I did want to mention too was you have like, you know, they them pronouns. Like I just wanted to talk about how you feel like that has impacted, if at all, you know, and feel free to be as deep or not, as being like a musician. Do just the kind of scenes that you've been a part of, like how it translated to other people, or how other people's views translated to you?
Yeah, but that's the thing, like, I don't think, like, I've only just sort of, like, I only came out of this non-binary about a year ago.
Okay.
But, I mean, I guess that's a thing, though, as well, like, coming from where we came from, we didn't really know a lot about that stuff. We knew that like, some of our friends were queer and stuff, and I didn't accept it for a really long time, because I was really, closeted and didn't really know anything. I still don't really know a lot about myself in terms of that stuff, but I mean, like, the experiences I have with friends like Sandra from Eboa and Scarlett from Circuits, or, Marion from Diploid, and all these people around me in this community that, people who, their experiences with being queer and whatnot, and I still don't really know how to grapple with it, but because I don't really know myself very well in terms of my world. And so coming to terms with that is still something I'm sort of still figuring out as a musician, but it doesn't really sort of impact anything. It doesn't really change anything in terms of my musicianship. It sort of, I mean, it's different with black metal, because obviously with Alloxylon, like, obviously there's a fucking huge white supremacy problem, and a lot of Nazi stuff and things, people who would wish death on queer folks, like things like that, like really fuck shit. And that's the thing, like, I go, it's a bit confronting, because it's like I'm sort of feeling like, putting myself a bit on display. And the thing is that I get really tired of, this sort of like, this idea of the one-man black metal thing. I find it really difficult sometimes when, I'm talking to folks about, like, from overseas or something, if they're related to black metal or buying tapes or whatever, and talking to them, and they're like, oh yeah, cool man, like, and it's like, oh fuck, like, I don't want to open this dialogue with this person to be like, hey, I'm actually not a man, so please don't refer to me as, and then it's just gonna, like, it's like, I don't know, I'm still sort of grappling with that.
I think we've probably had fairly similar experiences where that, even us in particular, having like facial hair, even, like, we tend to kind of just breeze into, like, I guess, like, masculine or male spaces where, like, you kind of find yourself there under, like, an assumption, and then you realize you're kind of in, like, a somewhat hostile environment, like people that don't necessarily agree with your views or agree with who you are, but you've kind of coasted in on how you look, or, like, just by their assumption of your gender. I mean, I personally have felt that. I don't know how relatable it is to you, but I mean, in genres like black metal or hardcore, where it is kind of still very, it's not super progressive in a lot of ways.
No.
Where, like, I feel like black metal and, like, hardcore in particular, well, like, some branches of hardcore are still kind of rooted in, like, having, like, a tough exterior. It's very, like, even, like, I've worked in, done, like, things like laboring or, like, working in jobs like that where, like, they just assume that I'm a dude, and that, and then, it comes to those conversations, and then I don't know where to, like, bring up who I am or how I feel about a lot of things. Like, unfortunately for me, I guess I'm like queer, genderqueer, straight edge, and, like, don't eat meat, so there's, like, a lot of things that are not great to have conversations about, like, super masculine spaces.
Same in sort of, like, my job as well, and, like, sort of trying to communicate that is difficult. And like, the thing is, I guess a lot of people are a lot more understanding, even if they don't get it. But this is in an art world, I guess, so where there's a lot more space held for the people who are queer or, trans or whatever. But the good thing is that, I guess a lot of that is changing, and people are becoming aware of it, even if they don't get it. Like, but that's just I have, like I said, I'm still relatively new to a lot of this world, and still learning a lot about myself in terms of that world. But like, from the people I've met who are queer and stuff, and they're all really helpful and wise people who have really shaped my worldview on that kind of stuff, and people who I really care about, like, who I value so highly, just because of their contributions to the scene and what they put forward.
You've done, like, quite a lot of solo projects. Like, there's, like, you've done like been quite prolific, I guess, as just an individual, and like you obviously like do visual art as well, as in like I know you paint. Like I really enjoy your paintings and like physical art. I haven't seen I don't think, apart from like the VHS tape clips that Alloxylon did. But I know you do kind of, I guess, would it be classified as like VJing? Like,
yeah, like I did a lot of like glitch video art. Like originally, before I was a painter, when I was in my undergraduate, way back in 2011.
Yeah, you have a degree, like an arts degree or an art degree.
Yeah, like currently doing a master's as well in curatorship.
Yeah.
And, I obviously did a big gap in between those things because I wanted to play music and tour and stuff, and I thought I was done with it, but I wasn't. And I sort of went back into the academic world and stuff. But like I guess that's the thing. Like with the VJ stuff, it was like the solo sort of stuff I did was mainly like glitch sort of stuff, informed by like Capital Waste pictures from Adelaide, like Liam Somerville, who basically was my introduction to. I had always loved that glitch stuff. I never knew how to do it until I met him.
Yeah.
He was involved, like Dark Knife, which was a project with Michael Ellingford, who was in the screamer band VVarp, who was also another band that really influenced my other screamer band, like Hate, because we became good friends. And so, but then I met my mate Darren, who does Electric Light Brigade, and that was another world of it, which was like the more practical, hands-on stuff, which was like the liquid light show stuff. So I had always been really involved in stuff thanks to all these like mentors and people like, giving me a shot at all these things, because I was always really intrigued by a lot of that stuff. And and that's a thing, as well as like the prolificness of my sort of myself. The reason I guess I do so much is because I guess I just don't want to stop and think, I guess. It sort of fills the void in my brain in which I can, I don't have to have the chattering constantly, and it keeps me busy. But it reaches a point where there's like, some pretty severe burnout, but like right now, like I'm not really able to. I'm sort of like in between sort of creating things. I've sort of demoed the next Alloxylon album, but and like I'm still waiting to record the World at a Glance album, which we've been writing for years now. About just different things. We had different drummers and whatnot. And like just sort of like I sort of definitely spread myself far too thin all the time because I'm an idiot. But because I love that shit, like it's fun, and it really gives me like a completeness, and sort of, even though my time is very short, and I'm able to sort of fulfill my desires and sort of musical exploration. And then and same with painting, like I work at an art shop, and all the people around me are really amazing painters and successful painters, so like a lot of that knowledge I get for free because they're just people who do it, and I'm able to learn. Same with like Dan from Electric Light Brigade, and Liam from Capital Waste, and and all these people, and Ballard from Circuits, and all these people are just really valuable people I've had in my life, and mentors, who just have like gone, hey, this is really cool, you should come along with this, and I go, cool, awesome.
It's sick that you had like some people that were interested in like helping you grow. Like it sounds pretty like important to like that really pushed you to do it, I guess, like when you wanted to have people that could show you how to do things. And sure, Reese, who was like, when I like, it was funny because when we met like year 8. Yeah, right.
And we didn't, like, we were like not really, like, we didn't quite get each other at first. We sort of weren't really friends, but I was hanging out with their group, and then we became really good friends, and we played like a heap of music together. And it's just funny because a lot of music I got into was due to Reese. He was like getting into this hardcore and heavy grindcore and stuff and whatnot. So a lot of these musical things I owe to Reese in my exploration of music, and then but I sort of went down the more screamo side of things.
Yeah.
But we still played in bands together all the time. We played in another band together that I feel like was sort of a bit more, wasn't around for as long, and it was I feel like a bit more forgotten about, but which was called Idle Minds. It was a hardcore punk band.
Yeah.
That I was the vocal.
I remember the name.
And like James Kane and James Tyrrell, who went on to like Body Maintenance, and and all these other sort of post-punk sort of rock bands and stuff, which are all amazing. And yeah, it's funny just because we all, I don't even know how we came together, we just did, like, and that's the thing, like you were saying before, how we met. It's like, it's just kind of these things that just like these people just kind of come into your life, and you just go, yeah, fuck.
Just happens.
You know where it's at. You know we're on the same path with these things, and it just sort of makes sense, you know.
So how long has Alloxylon been like a thing now? Like, because you've done like 2 releases.
So there's been a few done. Like, so I'd say like there's the 2 tapes, which are like the black metal stuff.
Yeah.
Which are like Flamium 1 and Flamium 2.
Yeah.
Originally the project was meant to be an ambient project, purely like there was never going to be any black metal. It was started off as like a black metal thing, but I just couldn't get the songs right. I just couldn't make it make sense, and it was just not good. And I was like, fuck it. I really want more ambient stuff, because at the time I was doing a lot of ambient material with Sunbeams and Rockets, and like that made sense to me. It was more dark and brooding, because when I was a teenager I had a really crap ambient black metal project, which was influenced by Vlad Tepes, which is like Moe, or however you say it, like MOE with 2 umlauts, and like Le Legionnaires Noir, like the Black
like
Legion,
that.
Black scene for France. And I was like, at the time, this was in high school, I was really into black metal. I was getting into obviously like Mayhem and all that stuff. But,
like the French stuff is like super interesting. There's some really unusual bands that were happening over there.
There's some real crap stuff, but also there's some really amazing stuff too. But so like with the ambient black metal stuff of Alloxylon, like I had this original project called The Silence. It was the crappiest shit ever. The EP called Le Fin de Vie. Like end of life or something in French, and I was like trying to be real cool and trying to be like that, and it sucked. But
I feel like a lot of people go through that phase of like, I think I had like I made like a black metal project when I would have been like about year 9 or 10. Like I left school, but I was in TAFE and I was just learning how to like record things, and I was like throwing around all these ideas of like having names that were in Norwegian for whatever reason, even though I grew up in Australia. I was like, I think everyone has that thing of like, oh, black metal's from Norway, like we do Norwegian shit.
Like cold, frostbitten, and it's the middle of summer and it's 40 degrees.
Fucking Victoria East Craig.
Like Alloxylon was originally like just purely ambient stuff that I was doing, and obviously I got Pete from again, because of like Facebook and social media. Like I was in a black metal group, Australian black metal group, and Pete, who runs Brilliant Emperor, was running it, so I messaged him and was like, hey, I want to add it to this list of bands in the country that are black metal related or adjacent.
Yeah, right.
And he was like, oh, I actually really enjoyed this tape, can I release it? And then it just started from there. And then when I released Flamium 1, which was just on my own terms, which was meant purely as like a, these are the ideas that didn't actually make it, I'm an ambient black metal project. And then Terry from Goat Prayer, which is now Death Prayer Record, picked it up and was like, hey, I'll release it for you. And then the rest is kind of history, and then I released it too. And there was all these ambient releases, and as well as like, there was the first 2 EPs, and then the videotape. But before the videotape was the demo, but the videotape was supposed to come out before it, and there was all this like kerfuffle. But now Flamium 2 is like the start. I sort of consider that to be the start. Yeah,
that's like the one, like something that kind of encompasses what you actually want to do, you feel?
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. And it's sort of like, onward from there. Now that I've demoed the next album, I can start writing that when I feel ready to. But then, the next phase of that, after playing the show on the Monday, with just ambient stuff by myself, I sort of started thinking, maybe it's probably time I sort of started gathering folks to do it, because like the thing was I'm like, fuck, this would be really fun to play live. But the thing is, I sort of quarrel with myself in terms of like how I was like, because I've written all the music, I don't want to make people just be playing, you know. I want them to be able to bring their own thing to the table and whatnot, because I feel like that's kind of selfish of me to be like, you have to play exactly what I wrote, you have to do all this and learn all the songs I wrote. You know, that feels really mean. I don't know.
I guess it would be...
I know, it's still upsetting.
It'd probably be a bit weird too. Like, I mean, I guess I've seen a handful of, you know, people talk about this idea of like, how would you do like a project that you solely did on your own, like especially as a multi-instrumentalist, like what do you do in the band? And like ultimately, like, you know, I guess the vocals is kind of like the main thing that is like would be recognizably different if you did something else. But just from like seeing what you've done in the past, I imagine vocals probably isn't like your main like instrument.
Well, no, drums was really the main instrument. I learned so my piano teacher, I learned piano for about 8 or 9 years, and my piano teacher was really fundamental in terms of me getting into heavy music. Got me into Dillinger Escape Plan, got me into a heap of black metal, like my favorite Symphonic art, as well as Cradle of Filth and stuff like that. And I remember I used to go to his house to learn piano, to have lessons, and that was like another introduction to heavy music for me, because it was like, I was like, oh, what's that instrument in the corner? And he's like, oh, it's the drums.
Yeah.
He's like, do you want to have a hit? And then the rest is history. I learned drums from that. And then Reese obviously taught me blast beats and heavy as shit. And also my drum teacher did also teach me blast beats, but not the same degree of Reese's blasting. But I taught myself guitar from, although I would consider guitar probably would be more my favorite instrument in terms of playing, but obviously piano is the root of all that, and drums the root of that too. But so like I said, I've had a lot of lucky mentors and good people to help me guide stuff. And
was piano like your first instrument then? Like, or keys was the first instrument? Yeah. Well, like how old were you then? Like, was that pretty like early on, or?
Yeah, so when I first started learning piano, I probably was like in grade. So I have been actually learning piano for a lot longer than that. Since I was learning, I used to go to like a piano school in Narre Warren, where Shane, the teacher, was, and I would learn from him, and he taught me like the basics, and then he left, and I was really gutted because I really loved him as a piano teacher, and I left because my mum was like, no, you don't have to do it anymore, and I went, no. And then like finding him again doing private stuff just out of his house, going back to him learning piano, and then from there like spurred this like really lifelong relationship. Unfortunately, I've lost contact with him, and I have absolutely no idea where he is in this world. And if you look at the liner notes of a lot of releases I have been on, I usually include a little message to him because of how fundamental he was to literally everything I've done. I wish I could find him. I've got a lead now. I've tried everything except for this one lead, which was a drummer he was with in one of his bands called Citizen Pain. I wish I still had the demo. It was really funny, but it's really goofy metal. But this drummer was at one point a Guinness World Book of Record holder for the fastest amount of drum strokes per second.
Yeah, right.
It's obviously been
been shredded by now.
The moon over, absolutely shredded. But I haven't tried contacting this guy to see if I could find my old piano teacher, because I don't know where he is. I don't have a number, and his name's super basic, like Shane Burns. There's a million Shane Burns in this club.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
So like basically a lot of my heavy music alignment has been purely because of him.
Yeah. Wow.
And it sucks that I can't find him, but it's like, with black metal is the thing. I think of him. He introduced me to symphonic black metal, which Symphonic art. And I remember listening to this Moon in the Scorpio album. I still listen to it on the regular, just over and over and over. I remember I can still play. He taught me one of the songs off that album.
Yeah, right.
Which is called Dark Zone Martyrium, and it's this really epic. It's just a great album, and just basically my introduction to black metal, aside from Mayhem in high school, and all the rest of them, and Dark Throne and whatnot, and purely because of this piano teacher. And yeah, fuck.
Do you feel like that kind of like symphonic black metal at like that younger age is what kind of led you toward
like dungeon synth and
stuff, dungeon synth, exactly, yeah. Is that kind of what you feel like that's...
defo. Yeah, definitely, because obviously like learning a lot of classical, I was more into the classical rather than the jazz side of piano, but yeah, so I was always like much more interested in that stuff, and I feel like it was a natural sort of progression. I always really sort of gravitated toward it when I found it, because I was like, oh, like fuck yeah. Like I remember the first time I had ever heard the word dungeon synth was when Diploid went on a tour to Newcastle, and a lot of people around there, like Edo, who played in bands like Obat Batuk and whatnot, were really into the outside of music. Bands, and like dungeon synth. There was a lot of dungeon synth in Newcastle, and I remember friends of mine who are from Newcastle telling me about Newcastle dungeon synth. It's funny because like, oh, fuck, that's so weird. Like such a weird important part of this. Because there's a lot of, I remember being there, lots of noise, lots of grind, lots of dungeon synth, and then you got like bands like Code Nation from Newcastle and stuff, and it's funny, like it's weird.
There is like, I feel like there's funny little pockets everywhere of like black metal, because it's so like it's such like a unusual art form. Like even so, like I lived up near sort of like Coffs Harbour and Port Macquarie for like a number of years, between like I was like 18 till I was about maybe like 21, and then I was back there for about a year before moving to Sydney. And like, just through like the couple people I did know there was like, there was like a label that ran out of there. I saw like a handful of bands like pop up, or like, single like one person projects, like even like people that like seem like, I guess, super normal, like, which isn't that weird, but like a handful of times we had like these open mic things, and I went up and did like a noise set at like this open mic in like Port Macquarie, and the bouncer, like the dude that was there, had actually released like a bunch of these tapes, like black metal tapes, like to some relative success, like to like some European labels or whatever, and he had like the every tape had like a note that he wrote like in his own blood and shit like that, that real like super edgy stuff. But it was like, like I was like, Port Macquarie, like there's like no music scene basically at all, except for like some like kind of indie rock bands, and then there's like this little pocket of like weird, and there was like there's this dude that has like a solo project called like Vampire, and it's just all about him being like this, like the last true vampire, and he's just like kind of like, I think I have one somewhere, I should have got it out, but it's pretty crazy like that it pops up even in places like that.
That's so sick. I love those kind of things, those little surprises.
I mean, I guess like I was just talking about, I mentioned some labels overseas, like I mean, like Death Prayer, a pretty big label, I guess, relatively like successful label, and so was like Goat Prayer, and so was like Death Cult before that. Like I think I remember actually seeing your release just pop up on my Bandcamp before I knew it was you, and then like seeing you post about it, I was like, oh shit, like that's Scott, like
super duper weird. It still weeks me out a bit, like just my involvement with that is purely chance, Terry from Goat Prayer, like Death Cult, they were friends, and like it just they gravitated toward each other, and started this label together. And I was just like, fuck, alright, like shit, the same label that released Lamp of Murmur, and I'm like, alright, fuck, Jesus,
like doing these,
like, how did this fucking happen? Like, how am I any way involved in this? Like, and it was kind of jarring to me, but it was very nice. It's a nice feeling, because I was just like, fuck, I wouldn't have expected this to happen at all. Like, just from something I did purely out of boredom or interest, like to find out enjoyment. What, because I like black metal, like.
I wonder if
it's kind of nice.
I wonder if it's sort of like what we were talking about before, how like, I guess bands like, like Lamp of Murmur and like, and those kind of projects, like whether they feel the same way, like about, you know, like whether we perceive them as like as like bigger than they feel like they are. Because like I guess it's funny to think like, you know, as like, you know, as us or like you particularly, like just being like this, you know, like a single person project like from Australia, you know, to like consider a project like that or like, you know, a record label like Death Prayer as like your peers. But, you know, like I guess you are now, and like, you know, that probably makes other people view you like the same way, which I think is pretty sick. Like
yeah, it's a weird concept. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the thing. I just think of it. I'm just me, you know. Like I'm just doing my own thing, and I think of like the projects like that. Yeah, definitely they would probably, I'd say, probably feel the same way, or like Holder or something. Like they just people because they wanted to do it and they loved it and stuff. But and then you look at like Lamp of Murmur now. They're going to play Roadburn. Yeah. Which is ridiculous. Like good on them. Fucking they well deserve it. They're probably the biggest black metal act of our time, this generation. But it still feels very surreal to me in terms of anything really. Just any musical project I've done that anybody has sort of shown interest in. It's just like it's very humbling and also very confronting at the same time, because I'm just kind of like fuck. And it's just like it's like I'm in this and people can see me, and that's terrifying. But it's also very nice to feel validated for creating these things and people receiving it and being like, hey, I really enjoyed this. And that's very nice, like to feel that validation from folks, and that people, you know, it hits them on a level, and whatever project it may be. Like even though like Sunbeams and Rockets wasn't around for very long because it made me too depressed to do it, but you know, I only played like a handful of shows on one hand, but I remember like someone saying to me, it was like a Monday night show, and them coming up to me and being like, that reached me on a really supreme level that I've never really sort of felt before, and that was like unreal to me. I was just like, how the fuck, like, how really, like, I was like, fuck, I can't really begin to say how much that means to me. Yeah. But, you know, like, but it still spins me out a bit. Like, I still feel like I'm still living in my own world and sort of just going about my daily tasks and whatnot. And I guess, like I said, like, I create to not go insane. So, it's a bit weird. That story you just had then reminded me of when I was probably like 17 or something, or younger than that, but like that was about when this happened. I was in like a noise rock kind of band, and it was like I think it was like a Thursday night, you know, like someone was like, oh hey, do you want to come play like in this venue? And we're like, all right, sure. And then I think we covered most of the room in like tinfoil, and I was wearing like a, you know, some long like colorful like dress thing at the time, and I was just like, we were just like, you know, doing whatever, like making lots of noise, being really loud. And some guy was just like, I mean, it was probably partially out of his ignorance to the genre, but he was like, I never got to see Pink Floyd, but that was pretty close. And I was like, and I was like, wow, like, especially at the time, like, I was super fascinated with like those like big Pink Floyd performances, you know, with like I can't remember what it was called, the one where they, you know, they played in that like Coliseum looking thing. Live in Pompeii. Yeah, in Pompeii, yeah. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I love that concept. The fact that someone could like see that and then think of like my band, you know, covering ourselves in tinfoil, and being like, you know, make a connection to that, I was like, yeah, super stoked. That's great. Anytime someone really enjoys something. Well, I mean, like, you've had like a fair bit of like success on a few things. Like, I mean, before you left Diploid, you did like Japan, and like, so like that's a pretty big deal. Like, I don't know how it feels like being in that position, but like, you know, I haven't, you know, like toured overseas or anything, and from my perspective it felt like that was pretty big. Yeah, it was. And the thing was that was purely because of like race and stuff. He is like just a heretic organizer. Like, he just wanted to get, like, basically any tour I've done overseas is purely because of Reese. Just his organization, he's just on another level of that stuff. Like, I was just along for the ride, purely.
Yeah.
That's the thing, though, even, like, yeah, I think about how lucky I was to even go to any of those places with any of those bands, like when Wwarp Glance went with Diploid, because Reese was in Wwarp Glance as well at one point. And, like, him organising this tour to Southeast Asia, and then, you know, Diploid going to Japan and then Korea, and then my final tour, which was sort of not going to happen almost, did happen, and I went, even though I had left the band at that point. I was lucky to go, and it was probably one of the best tours I ever went on. You know, like the last show, my last show with Diploid and like Hate 6 filmed it. And
oh wow!
I couldn't believe it. He was there filming Jesus Peace in their tour of Japan, and he contacted us. He was like, "Hey, I've just got some spare time. Can I see your band play?" And I was like, "What the
wow!"
fuck?
Like he messaged you as well. That's like super cool.
Yeah, like he messaged the band page and just was like, "Hey, I come to this," and we're like, "What planet are we on? Like, where this is happening?" And like I said, I think like purely any of this stuff that's happened is purely just luck, and just like I've been so lucky to even have any of these fucking experiences, and like I find it really surreal, and I'm always really grateful of it because fuck, like although like yeah, I wouldn't say I'm successful. I just like making stuff, like you know, it's very validating, and just it's very sweet that people receive it, and just but yeah, I also realize how lucky and privileged I am to, you know, even get the chance to do literally any of that stuff. So it's good. I'm pretty happy with it, you know. I'm pretty content with that. But you know, I get down on myself a lot, as most of us probably do. And
I completely
understand. I'm not fucking, none of this is worthwhile, and none of it's worth my time. I shouldn't be doing this. I should just give up. And sort of like, but if I didn't do it, I would be even worse off. Yeah. Even if I am burnt up. You know, so it's nice. It's very validating. And I've met you, I've met so many fucking people, like, just that are so lovely. Where else would I get to meet anybody like this, in a community where I feel valued by people, and, I share these experiences with amazing people who are all amazing.
I mean, even outside of, like, actual, like the art and the stuff we get to make, it's funny, like, I guess, I don't know if you've had a similar experience, like, over time, having or meeting people even through work that are, like, more, I mean, I guess I probably overuse the word normie, but, like, just sort of people that are outside of, like, art and music scenes that just, they have, like, their like a couple of friends, like most people do, and then they don't really have, like, acquaintances or, like, other kind of, like, friend groups, whereas, like, I guess for me, and I imagine you have the same thing, is, like, I have my close friends, but, like, I know probably 100 people in every city, like, if I go there, I spend a lot of time, like, saying hello to people I haven't seen in a year or two, and it's like, I just know so many people, which is, like, amazing, and, like, they're all people that I, like, adore, in like, different ways, that aren't necessarily even just my close friends, and I feel like a lot of people don't get to have that sort of thing outside of, like, art and music.
Definitely.
It's been pretty tricky. I can imagine as well, like, like having, dealing with a lot of things emotionally and mentally. It's been difficult while, like, we've had, I mean, you guys have had more lockdowns. Like, I was there for the start of, some of the lockdowns in Melbourne, and I've also had one here, but you guys had, like, the longest ones, is where, like, keeping, like, holding up friendships and, like, acquaintanceships through that period was really difficult, because you really had to do it, like, manually. Like, there wasn't shows where you just caught up with everyone. Like, to maintain lots of friendships is can be quite taxing, like, especially when you're just trying to hold it together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fuck. Very much so.
Yeah.
It's like thinking of how, just everyone I know just going through it, and just their experiences with it is so vastly different in every respect.
Yeah.
So it's a bit. It was crappy, that's for sure. We had a really hectic storm here, and our house flooded.
Yeah.
And they were just, my housemates were just making sure that my cat was with me in the years.
Oh yeah.
Opened up the door open, but then we got SES inspecting them.
Oh yeah, gotta make sure the cat's safe.
Yeah, no,
That's
he's
so nice.
all good. He's right here with me.
That's good. I was tossing up whether to let my cat in here, because he's been a bit grumpy because we've been not letting him outside. Well, he's been a bit sick. He's on some like antibiotics, and we want to make sure he takes all of them so he hasn't been out or anything.
Yeah. My cat's the same. He's an indoor cat, but he's had a myriad of health issues, so I've had to. Yeah. It's never nice, and they're always grumpy at you, but you love them. That's why you do it.
Yeah, I have this habit of ending up, like adopting like stray cats, so it's hard to keep them inside all the time. Yeah. Just for anyone.
Yeah, of course.
Anyone that's I would ideally have indoor cats, and he might end up that way since we've managed to keep him in for a week, but we'll see.
That's also the thing as well. My partner's the same as their cats are, were strays. Like one of them is the mother of one of the.
Yeah, I have the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They let them outside and stuff because it's like, well, they were born on the street.
Yeah.
Why would I, stop them from being able to do that? Because it'd make them really unhappy. So obviously they get to go outside, but they're also living in the cities where they don't really do much harm.
Yeah. I mean, you can give them little bells and stuff to do the best they can.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's a thing. Like, the things we do for our little babies.
Yeah.
The Falafel, like my cat. I adopted him through a rescue, but he wasn't born out as a stray. I think his mother was a stray, but brought him inside when she had the babies, and he was one of them.
I mean, another thing that I enjoy, I've talked to you like a couple of times about, I think, was the gear hunting, sort of like Facebook Marketplace and stuff. I was super stoked. I think when you bought it, I messaged you that Eminar, like that old tube head, like the because I was like I'd sort of like I'd seen it up, and I was like, man, I hope that goes to someone that's gonna like appreciate that enough. And it was so cool that that you bought that.
The funny thing is that when I bought that head, I was like, sweet, I finally got the head, but I don't have a cab. And then literally like a week later, my current amp, which is another Eminar, which is a different one, was an Eminar head and cab, which I bought the original head, the first one, for $500, but this cab and head combo was $700, and I was like, I can't pass this up. Like this is like a sign. And that was the thing. That was like the really bad peak of my, marketplace foraging.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to sell this head before I can buy the head and cab, which I didn't end up doing. I ended up buying the head and cab and then selling the head later.
Yeah.
I ended up selling it to Qua from Ashbel. And but yeah, like it was super funny. Just like I cannot pass this up. And even now I'm like sort of looking at like I can't afford to at the moment to buy gear anyway, but the thing is I'm looking at synthesizers and they're really expensive, so I'm not going to be buying one of those anytime soon. But that's the thing, I'm trying. It's addictive, like Marketplace. As cursed as Facebook is, the Marketplace is like, it's so addictive and it's so bad and just like just can't stop.
And then there's like there's those cool things though, like especially those things like the kind of like that Australian like tube amp stuff. Like there's a lot of that pops up where like someone's granddad dies and then there's like this amp that they bought a billion years ago. Like I've got just up here in my room, I've got like a Jensen Basement 100, which was like, I think Jensen was like a New Zealand company, but it's like basically like it's essentially an exact like remake of a blackface Bassman, but like made in New Zealand, like, and it's super like it's it's a bit crackly because it's so old, but it's sick, and there's like a master gain in the back. It's actually, I looked it up, it's quite an early one because they got a cease and desist, I think, on actually saying Basement on it, because they were like, because it's literally the same circuit, so this one says Basement on it, so it's like it's a pretty early one, which is sick, and it's like it's the same sort of thing where if you turn it up, it starts to break up, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, fuck yes.
I think I remember seeing.
That's a fun.
Sorry.
Oh, you go.
Oh, I remember also seeing you. I think you bought like a DoD grunge for like $20 or something as well. Once upon a time, I've got a similar story that just made me want to talk about as well.
Yeah, those things are nasty. They're great. Like it was like was the grunge, or was it a? Yeah, it was a grunge. Yeah, it's like this really ugly green one though. Like it's just, I don't know if I still have it. I think it broke, but well, I really hope I did what I did with that. I wonder what I did with it, but it must have broken. But fuck, it was good. Like it was just, for the time I was working, it was just so.
They're so fat. Like I feel so thick. I mean, I love that era of like I've watched some videos on it. I can't remember. I think it was Jason Lamb was the dude's name that did like that era of pedals that had like the funky names, like like the original DoD death metal with like the like scream and shit on it. Like I'll show you the one here. Actually, I've got it. This one I got for like $50 or something. It's like what's it called? A grind. It's like, I'll just show this on the camera. And it's got like the blast, rumble, burn, and fear. Is the and it's like it's like the.
And what do they do? Who knows?
Yeah. But and like so cool. I love that era of it, and it's like like the original death metals are really sought after now and stuff, and like actually this one because I saw it was listed as like, it just said distortion pedal, and I was like, oh, that's like a DoD pedal, and I was like,
oh man,
and I was like, it's got the names and everything. I was like, I looked it up, and there was only one I could find for sale that was it was probably a bit exaggerated because no one else was selling one, but it was up for like $700, and I paid like $50 for that, and I was like, sweet. Sometimes, and it's the most like it's not. Yeah, and it's not like a super like clean like metal distortion. It's like pretty fuzzy, but like when I like like crank that Basement and then like push that into it, like it's just super that super fuzzy like doomy stuff. It's so much fun. Even I've got so like good. I've came into so many cool things like that. Actually, I'm just going on a tangent, but like this guy gave me a bass cab once. Because he was like downsizing stuff, and he's like, oh, here, I have this bass cab, and it was like, it looked to me like just kind of something generic or whatever. And I remember one time like taking it apart, and I did it, like I looked at the speakers and I did a little search on it and stuff, and asked some people about it, and I think it was like it was made in Adelaide by like this guy. It's like it's like an 810 bass cab, and it's like they were like hand wound or handmade speakers that were made in Adelaide, and then like the other set of speakers were like this New Zealand brand. So, and the cabs like nice, like a wood solid construction cab, like it's beautiful, and like someone just gave it to me, and it turned out to actually be something really awesome. Yeah, I love those kind of things, like op shop stuff and finding stuff, places where people don't necessarily know what they have.
And that's the funny thing, it's like when you see those things as well, like you just like, you have that internal dialogue of like, I need to take a chance here. Do I buy it or do I leave it? Do I take the risk? It's like, do I do it? Oh my god, like it's like this like, oh god, I gotta think about this, like, oh my god, I'm overwhelmed, and then it's like, oh fuck it, I'll just get it.
How long do I have to not eat for after I buy this? Is that gonna be an option for me?
Yeah. I remember when I bought the heading cab, the MNR, having not sold the previous MNR, I was like, it was like a stock market or something. It was like a risk.
Yeah.
I was like, I could really royally fuck myself over here, and because I ended up selling it, but I was just like, fuck, this is getting a bit hairy. Like, just like everything's got to take a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let Jesus take the wheel.
Actually, you know what? I'm interested. What, like, do you remember when you like kind of discovered like noise, like stuff that's just pure like nothingness, and did it sort of resonate with you to start with, or were you like, this is, what the fuck is this? And then later you actually like, oh, this is sick, or because I feel like it's such an obscurity that people have different paths of ending up there. Yeah,
definitely. The noise, again, because of Reese and my mate Harry as well, and Mariam as well from Diploid, like, we all like sort of gravitated toward that stuff. We were like, like finding out about, Hannah Tarash, like the bulldozer, and, all that stuff, and that, like, I love boredoms as well, like anything Yemen Tucker I's ever done, I love boredoms. Love the early noise stuff as well as Hannah Tarash, and like, so like when we were young, we had a really lucky advantage of like, we had like a room in a shed in which to play music. It was soundproof, and we would just like hang out on a Friday or a Saturday after school on a Friday, or like on the weekend. Just like making noise tapes together, and obviously like at that time we had just discovered like Missing Link and bands like Pathetic Human and Collapsed Toilet Vietnam, and Occult Blood as well, and bands that we all looked up to, like bands like Whitehorse and stuff like that, and just being totally amazed by like in Missing Link Records when it did exist, and like being totally amazed by these tapes and stuff, these noise tapes that we'd come across, and we wanted to be a part of that. So we released tapes together and stuff like that, and just on the weekend just play noise. So we all really loved it for a really early age. And we really gravitated toward it really hectically, and I feel like that's definitely a part of like, you look at Diploid now and how much the noise is integral to the sound, as well as, or literally any other project we've all been involved in involves some variety of noise in it, because we're all really influenced by that.
That actually reminds me, I mean, I didn't really keep track of the timeline with like you and Diploid. I was curious whether you were involved with like the collaboration set?
So I played in Occult Blood. I had left at that point. When they played with the Body, Dan, who plays in Plobbers, he's also Claire's partner. He played in Diploid at that point. I had left a few months prior, maybe a bit longer. But I played with Occult Blood for that set, and so I was involved in some way, but not with the Diploid, the Body set. Okay. I was really proud of them for that though, because like they got to play with their favorite bands. I was living in like rural New South Wales at the time, and unfortunately it just wasn't something I could afford to go and see. But like I thought that was so sick too. Like I mean, I love those kind of collaborations that like the Body do, and like, but and I thought it was so sick that they even cared to do it with a band from Australia. Well, I think that was partly due to Pete Hyde from Whitehorse. He's friends with the guys from the Body, and he was like, "Yo, you should do this Make It Up club set with this band because they fucking love you." And like they got Diploid played with them at the show. They actually played as well as the post. And like I got to be involved with Occult Blood, which is Pete Hyde's noise project that he's involved in, or noisecore, and that was like super fun for me too, because I love doing noisecore drums. That shit is so fun, and you can just so free to do whatever the fuck you want, and it's ridiculous. Like that whole show was ridiculous.
Super awesome. I was just like, my only regret is that I didn't actually get to see the Body on that tour because of just, my financial and living situation at the time.
Fair enough.
But it was, super cool that they came out here even. I guess we'll, I guess we'll sort of wrap it up a little bit. Like, I guess the last thing, I guess it has a little bit of a comedic value because you quite often post about what you're listening to at the time, and it always reminds me. I think I actually messaged you and was like, how do I make these things? Because and then every time you post one, I'm like, oh shit, that's right, I can do that. Like, what have I been listening to? But yeah, I'm just curious what you've been listening to in the last like couple of weeks or whatever. Feel free to pull it up. Feel free to do the math.
Yeah. So fuck.
Because I imagine you listen to a lot of music. Quite like myself.
I've been trying to. I mean, jeez, what have I been? Let's see. Damn, this is a hectic one. I mean, so I got a spot. I gotta look at like all.
I feel like it's difficult being like into like noise and black metal and shit like that, because the names are always fucked, and I just never have the time to remember the names of everything. Yeah. People are like, "What have you been listening to?" And I'm like, "Hold on, let me check my Bandcamp wish list." Yeah. Because I can't. If you show me the album cover, I'll probably remember it. But like.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess lately I've been sort of revisiting a lot of what black metal and stuff. I've been sort of the things that take me to where I am and what I want to achieve. I guess like obviously Ackley's is like a really big one at the moment. Revisiting Symphonic art, as well as listening to a lot of Windear, like a lot of like that sort of somewhat Viking folk metal-ish stuff Windear is, but also like, you know, revisiting some silly things I used to listen to as a teenager, like a lot of like tofu music, like a lot of like bullet hell music and stuff, like video games, as well as like a lot of dystopia and insect warfare at the moment.
Yes.
But also Gangsta Pat and stuff like that, Deadly Verses. And sort of a few months ago, I was like, I'm not the most well versed on hip hop and stuff, and I really wanted to suss, you know, what that world was. And like, there, I know, like, sort of, I had like things I liked in terms of like hip hop and stuff, but they were like pretty surface level knowledge, and I just wanted to sort of figure out and listen to what was the really great stuff of that genre. And yeah, listening to a lot of that stuff and sort of realizing I think I like a lot of like Atlanta and Memphis related.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, like the Gangsta Pat sort of thing. Yeah, like all those, like some of my absolute favorite album covers of all time. That like Memphis, like, you know, like rap stuff, and like just the beat tapes and everything. Really, I'll have to send you some later. There's someone, I can't remember what his name was. It was something like Young Bear or Little Bear or something, and all the album the album cover is just bears like photoshopped everywhere. Yeah, and it's hilarious. And yeah, like so many like like Gangsta Black and shit, like where there's, you know, I remember noticing one recently. It was like this, I can't remember which artist it was, but like one of their records, you know, like there's the album cover, and then the next album cover is literally like, it's like the same background, but they didn't like have the background still. Like it's literally photoshopped on top of the old artwork. Like you can see bits of the logo and title like popping out. It's so funny. Like, but it's like, I find it really cool how DIY that kind of era of like hip hop was in those areas. Like it was all like, it had like a very punk kind of sensibility, and like how they were just like, let's just do it. Like, and I was like, I don't know how to make an album artwork, but let's just do it. Like, and it looks cool, thing, like, but it's beautiful. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like there is so much, like Reese again, and as well as I work at Jack and stuff, that introducing me to a lot of this stuff, and just like these underground, almost like, you know, like a lot of like Memphis stuff is very black metal, like it's very raw, it's very DIY. There are like all tapes, and there's like a YouTube channel that's purely just like demo tapes of just various rappers of that time, and they're all like really cooked, really like sludgy or like really raw, and a lot of it's like very like dark lyrically. Really occult. Like a lot of the a lot of like the lyrical content is quite dark as well. Like, I mean, it had a bit of like overlap with the kind of like horrorcore stuff. I mean, like where it was, I mean, like we've seen it kind of progress into, you know, like stuff like Suicide Boys, and it was like Dylan Ross and stuff like that. You know, like those like really dark, and like Bones. You know, like dudes like Bones, and I guess like even like stuff that we were talking about the other day, like Lil Ugly Mane and stuff, that have like these kind of like crossover and stuff. and yeah, like it's lyrically quite dark. Like I don't know, have you ever listened to Necro? Like it's not really like the same area, but like it was like very early on, like the horrorcore. Like it's basically like the early stuff is like that kind of like Memphis or like boom bap beats with like basically like Cannibal Corpse lyrics, you know, like, and it's all rapped and it's like super dark and gory, but yeah, like really cool stuff. And I find that really cool that like you have like the thought to go and like listen to something you don't know a lot about.
I get really intrigued in terms of like yeah, I don't know, I feel like if I'm gonna be involved in music, I should, like, it sounds really silly to be like, oh, I want to experience all music, you know, but I kind of do, because there's so much good shit to be discovered. There's so much interesting things and so many different things that, you know, obviously I will find things I don't like, and you know, but I feel like that's quite rare. Like I might not get it. I'll sometimes be a bit overly critical of things, which is really lame. I'm trying to sort of change that, because it's not fun and that's boring. But obviously, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I don't know. But I feel like I don't like I wouldn't say I don't like missing out, but like I also just am intrigued about, you know, what goes on in the worlds outside of the worlds I'm in. You know, like obviously I live in a small part. I'm only one person in a small world of things. You know.
Yeah. I feel like
what other people's experiences are like.
Yeah, like I think I've had similar sort of things with like over the last few years. I'd always found like jazz really interesting, and I think I realized that there was a lot of like avant-garde jazz through noise, because like a lot of these, like, you know, there's like a lot of saxophones and stuff in noise, and I was like, oh, this sounds really cool, and I'm like, I guess there's jazz that sounds like that too, and that kind of led me back to like regular jazz. I kind of went reverse into jazz, but and then like even this year, like country, like I've been super into like that kind of like outlaw country, and like even this new wave of like kind of like, you know, younger like lefty country dudes, and like, you know, women and stuff that are like, it's really cool, really good. Like, and I always knew there was country I liked, but I think it got kind of overshadowed by like your, you know, like Walmart country and like Lee Kernigan on the TV and stuff. And I was like, it took me a long time to realize that there was still like heavy, like emotionally intelligent country like happening. And that's been really enjoyable.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Country is definitely one thing I've like sort of explored a little bit, that I found like some things that I'm like, oh yeah, that's the shit. Like that's the really good shit.
There's and like I guess I feel like we both probably have quite an interest in like dark art, like art that has like heavy emotions in it. And I think country in particular has like a very certain brand of like how it portrays melancholy, and like that kind of it's like, especially when it's these really like stoic kind of masculine dudes, like just really like just kind of letting it out in like music. It's like, I guess, how they let out their emotions, and it makes for a really pure art, especially when it's like the vocal is kind of like the main element of it. Like that's kind of the focus, where I think a lot of other music I listen to is very like instrument based, and like the vocals is kind of like the last thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like there is definitely that focus, less so on vocals and more on, it's more of like, it becomes a bit of a secondary thing.
Because like a lot of the other sad music I listen to, there's either no vocals, or like most of the time, like it's hard to tell what they're like actually saying, like until you read like the notes, which like, you know, isn't bad. I feel like the feeling like is portrayed better, like, you know, in like those kind of black metal and like ambient black metal projects where you know, it's all sunken in reverb and stuff. Like the tones and stuff like convey the emotion really well. Like even like the body, like those like the noises that like they make vocally portray just as much, but it's just a totally different way than like singing words, like with super like a lot of intention.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, I guess we've, you know, told me what you were listening to. We talked about country briefly. I'm glad I got country in.
Yeah,
I guess that's interesting too. I guess it's something that people probably don't pick, that either you or me listen to a lot of country. But it's cool to talk about that. Yeah, it was good to see your face. It's probably been
likewise.
Yeah, it's probably been a couple years since I saw you anyway.
Fuck. Well, we'll have to change that soon.
Yeah, well, hopefully things will be open, and we'll make some noises together at some point.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely keep that.
All right. Well, yeah, it was really good to see you, and I'll probably talk to you soon.
Likewise. Yeah, sweet. I'll see you soon, alright? Thanks for the chat.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.